really enjoyed the film very much, Kevin. It's great. My understanding is that initially Benedict had optioned the book initially. Is that right? And
Well,
if so,
another producer called Lloyd Levin, who's an American producer, had optioned the book and brought it then to Benedict's company, Sunny March. And the reason he brought it to Benedict was because Benedict had actually helped publicize the book when it originally came out by doing, I think, a reading with the Guardian newspaper.
Ah, right. Okay. So with your background, you've got an extensive background in documentary and feature films, and it seems to be a story that could have gone either way. I'm just wondering why you chose the feature film option rather than the documentary film option.
I think that my goal with this film was to fully humanize a Muslim man who's accused of terror. We've never seen the war on terror from the Muslim point of view. We've only ever seen it from the point of view of America, really. So I felt that this was a project of humanization or of humanizing, and that is best achieved by a drama film where you have an actor who an audience can really relate to, where you can empathize with that person, put yourself in their shoes. A documentary tends to be, particularly when it's about a past event, it tends to be more intellectual.
So initially, I understand that you'd interviewed Nancy Hollander before filming had started, or before the feature film aspect of it began. I'm just wondering, from that point of view, when you interviewed her, is there stuff that came up in that footage that she revealed that didn't find its way into the feature film?
Yeah, my original plan actually was to do documentary interviews with all the main players. So with Stuart Couch and with Nancy Hollander and with Mohamedou, obviously. And I was going to use that partly as research tool, but also I had a plan at one stage to sort of end the film with the real people telling the last part of the story. And it turned out we didn't have the money to be able to pay for all these interviews, so I just did one. And secondly, I realized that wasn't the correct way to end the film, so I never ended up doing it. I wanted to end just with Mohamedou, really, and not hear the points of view of the other people. So yeah. So what was the second half of your question? I've forgotten.
Sorry. Yeah, is there anything that came up with your interviews with Nancy that didn't end up in the feature film?
Yeah, I mean, lots. Look, the one of the big challenges about this, and a lot of real life stories, is simplifying a very complex story. But this is such a complex story. It's got 3 different points of view, 3 different time periods. It takes place over 15 years. So one of the great difficulties, and one of the great agonizing things was, what do we leave out and what can we leave in? So yes, there's an awful lot of the story which is not in the film.
So I gather when you were putting this together initially and scripting it, although it starts off as it does sort of at a party, that there were various considerations for different beginnings to the film. What was under consideration to start the film rather than as it was?
I don't think there was ever any other beginning. I think that the film always began with the wedding party and Mohamedou being arrested, is my recollection of it. But obviously, it's a long time ago. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where did you hear that?
Well, it was from a Q&A that you yourself had done a little while ago.
Well, I think I must have been talking about something else. I must have misunderstood the question or something, because I don't think, in my recollections, there was ever any other opening sequence. I think we did talk about instead of going to Nancy Hollander's story after the wedding, that we stay with Mohamedou and go with him to Guantanamo. So that we go from him being arrested to his arrival in Guantanamo. so that we sort of experience, in a way that, you know, a lot of television documentaries do, you know, you see the worst thing that's going to happen to your subject right at the beginning of the film to make you think it's going to be exciting. But we did contemplate that at one time, but we decided against it.
Well, talking about those terrible things, there's obviously the torture scenes towards the end of the film, which are pretty brutal and quite an uncomfortable watch as well. I'm wondering from the both crew and cast point of view, how awkward, uncomfortable, difficult that was to shoot.
Well, you know, the way that the torture sequence was going to be filmed and how much we depicted was the subject of a great deal of discussion and debate between myself and the crew and the writers. It felt obviously important to show the reality of what happened to him and how depraved the treatment was. But you don't want to make a film where there's a sequence which people cannot stomach and which makes people leave the cinema if they should be so lucky to be in a cinema. And so, you know, I felt that I had to find a way to depict at least some of the reality of his treatment, but in a way that was not completely objective, that took you inside his head and showed you the effect on his mind of being tortured. So it became this very subjective experience where he sees his mother, hallucinates that his mother is in his cell with him. He hallucinates he's back in Mauritania. He flashes back to his memories of a child with his father. And that's sort of mixed up with the treatment that is being meted out to him, so that you're always inside his head. You're not in the point of view of the torturers, you're with him.
Yeah. You've got a great cast in this, and Jodie Foster's already won an award for her role in it. It seems to be a subject that would appeal to her, and I'm wondering if was much of a problem to persuade her to get on board with the project, to accept the role?
Look, Jodie's an incredibly picky actor. She doesn't do very much anymore. She's, I think, reached a stage in her career where she feels like, you know, something has to be really special for her to want to do it. Yeah. So I sent her the script thinking that she would pass on it, but wanting to give it a go, which is often what happens. You know, well, this is the ultimate person who you would like to get. Let's see if they'll go for it, and we'll assume they won't, but let's try. And that was what it was with her. But she came back to me very quickly and she said, I'm really interested. Let's talk about it. We met a few times and discussed the part, and I did some work with her on the part. And she was very definite about what she wanted the role to be. You know, she didn't mind being a kind of difficult person. She didn't mind being, you know, unappealing in some ways. She didn't feel like she needed to have a personal life going on. She felt that this is about a professional woman, and she's given all her personal life up in a way for this job that she does because she believes in it so strongly. So, you know, she very much shaped the role herself.
It's quite a contentious subject, obviously, Guantanamo Bay. And there's sort of various people that I know of who I've discussed it with. They've kind of said that, okay, Mohamedou, in inverted commas, got away on a legal technicality, but the flip side that they're saying is, nonetheless, there's this atrocity which he was arrested for, and evidently, why did they not find anything on him? I'm just wondering what your...
Well, I think that's whoever it is who's saying that doesn't really understand what went on.
Yeah.
He was arrested, as other people were around the world, basically kidnapped from his own country by the Americans, or by Jordanians acting on behalf of the Americans, in fact. He was kidnapped because they had suspicions about him, but they had no evidence that he had ever done anything. And during the course of the next 14 years, when they had him in prison, they didn't manage to find any evidence. Now, in the normal state of affairs in most civilized countries, you can only hold someone for a maximum of 2, 3, maybe days or weeks if you're lucky, on special exceptions. You can't hold someone without charging them. And this is what happened in Guantanamo to everybody who was taken there. America took them to Guantanamo because it was outside of the rule of American law. Guantanamo is actually, according to the White House lawyers, it's actually part of Cuba, and therefore American law does not apply. Now, obviously, that is a loophole. Nothing that happened in Mohamedou's case was a legal technicality. He was never charged. The case that we see in the film is a habeas corpus case. In a habeas case, the government has to prove that they have enough evidence to hold somebody. It's not a trial. It's got a lesser bar of evidentiary weight that has to be brought. But even with that low bar, the government could not say that they had enough evidence to hold him. So after 7 years, he was ordered released. But the Obama regime, for its own reasons, to do with, which are too complicated to go into now, but to do with public opinion for the most part, decided that they couldn't afford to waste the political capital of releasing this innocent man. And so they kept him for another 7 years until the very end of the Obama administration, at which time they felt it was safe to release him and it wouldn't affect their own popularity. So the idea that there is any evidence against him is simply not true. That, of course, is different than saying Mohamedou Ould Slahi never had anything to do with any jihadist group or spoke to any jihadist person. I can't say that he did or didn't, but even if he did, that's not a crime.
Thank you. Finally, Kevin, you're one of the elite filmmakers who is an Oscar winner. So I've got to ask you, where do you keep your Oscar?
I've got it right here. I think maybe you can see it there.
Oh, right.
I've got a bunch of awards sitting right there.
Well, at least it's not sort of in the toilet, which so many people say. Kevin, I really enjoyed the film. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice to talk to you.